Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and you're watching this special broadcast of top stories from our studios here in the National Capital Region. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, like every day, we have an expansive list of stories for you to cover. This is your one-stop shop to understand and catch the news pulse of the day. We will be touching upon the 69th day of the West Asian conflict between Israel and Hamas, but that's not all. We're also going to be cutting across to top global developments in terms of Biden's impeachment that has now been authorized by the United States' House of Representatives, which is also Republican-dominated, although they don't have much proof on Joe Biden at the moment. COP28, a significant shift, a landmark deal and a pact, and key takeaways from the United Nations' climate summit is also going to be our focus, ladies and gentlemen. But first and foremost, let's shift our focus to what's happening back at home. Yesterday, on the 13th of December, the Parliament, there was a security breach, and the disturbance in the Parliament is now under the purview of the Delhi Police's anti-terror unit. The Delhi Police's special cell has registered the case under the UAPA section as well. Now take a look at this. All the accused are being transferred to the special cell for further investigation. This is the team of the special cell that was still at the parliamentary premises late on in the night, carrying out various kinds of probes and investigations. All the accused are being transferred to the special cell for investigation, like I mentioned. Numerous special cell teams are actively being involved in conducting raids at various locations in relation to the 4 people that have been apprehended, those who are being held accused. Now, in response to an invitation from the Lok Sabha Secretariat, the Home Ministry has established a committee to probe the security lapse in the Lok Sabha security breach case. The committee is going to be headed by CRPF Director General Anish Dayal, and he will commence the investigation promptly. All of this happening in the purview of the security breach and as demanded by the Lok Sabha Secretariat. Now, the 2 individuals, Sagar Sharma and D. Manoranjan, deployed yellow smoke canisters within the Lok Sabha, while Neelam Devi and Amol Shinde burst red and yellow canisters outside the Parliament. Some of those visuals that you can see on your screens as well. The pictures completely went viral. Videos that were shared by various members of Parliament as well. They took the internet by storm as well. Now, one of the accused, they obtained the entrance passes at the behest of BJP MP Pratap Simha, who is from Karnataka, who plans to meet with Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla to clarify his role in how the pass requests were actually made. This is the shoe that you can see on your screens, inside which this smoke bomb was taken inside the parliamentary premises. Now, opposition leaders, they are set to convene with the president to address the security breach inside the parliament. The INDIA alliance, the opposition bloc as people call it, and the entirety of its leaders are going to hold a meeting in the parliament at 10 a.m. to coordinate and request a meeting with the president. Now, in the both houses, the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, the opposition, it seems, is going to press for a statement from the Home Minister, Amit Shah. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla has already issued an order to suspend the entry passes of former MPs and personal assistants of members of Parliament to the Parliament House until further notice. Let's listen in to some major stakeholders and then we'll come back for more.
दिल्ली पुलिस के माध्यम से उनको भी डिटेन करा गया है, लेके गए हैं पूछताछ के लिए। और क्योंकि ये मैटर सारा दिल्ली से संबंधित है और वहीं की जांच एजेंसियां जो वहां की पुलिस है वो उसके बारे में इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रही हैं। गुड़गांव पुलिस की तरफ से हम ये बताना चाहते हैं कि जितनी भी भरसक हमसे मदद हो पाएगी, हमसे जो मदद दिल्ली पुलिस की तरफ से मांगी जाएगी वो हम देंगे, और जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन के अंदर जितनी भी हम मदद कर सकते हैं वो संबंधित सभी जानकारी और मदद हम दिल्ली पुलिस को देंगे।
सर, जो 5 आरोपी हैं जिनमें एक फरार है, 4 को दिल्ली पुलिस ने अभी अरेस्ट किया हुआ है, वो 5 पहले गुरुग्राम में आए, यहां पर मंगलवार रात को आए, सुबह यहां से निकलते हैं, तो कहीं ना कहीं जो प्लानिंग है या फिर कहीं एपिसेंटर जो है वो यही था, तो उसको लेकर
देखिए, इट्स ऑल अबाउट मैटर ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेशन। अभी इन्वेस्टिगेशन जारी है। दिल्ली पुलिस इस सभी चीजों के तथ्यों का संज्ञान ले रही है, जिस माध्यम से जैसे भी जो जानकारियां गुड़गांव पुलिस के पास आई हैं, हम संबंधित सभी जो जानकारियां इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं और दिल्ली पुलिस को शेयर करेंगे। और जैसे कि बताया जा रहा है कि इस घर में आके उनके पास रुका है, ऑलरेडी डिटेन करा जा चुका है उनको, जो हमारे पास अभी तक सूचना प्राप्त हुई है, और संबंधित उनके खिलाफ जो कानूनी कार्रवाई करी जाएगी, उचित कार्रवाई उनके खिलाफ दिल्ली पुलिस अपने जो भी नियमानुसार करेगी।
विक्की का प्रोफाइल क्या है? विक्की का प्रोफाइल क्या है?
विक्की की प्रोफाइल की बात करें तो क्या
हाँ, प्रोफाइल क्या है?
देखिए, अभी क्योंकि हमारे संज्ञान में थोड़ी देर पहले ही सारी बातें आई हैं और क्योंकि इन्वेस्टिगेशन का मैटर है, हमें थोड़ा समय लगेगा सभी जानकारियों को इकट्ठा करने में, और जिस प्रकार से जो भी जानकारियां हमारे पास आएगी संबंधित हम आपसे भी शेयर करेंगे, और जो न्याय संगत बातें रहेंगी और जितनी भी बातें रहेंगी तथ्यों को देखते हुए सभी हम दिल्ली पुलिस के साथ शेयर करेंगे।
आपके हाथ लगा है सर?
हम सारे जितने भी हमारी जानकारी, हम जैसे बताया कि हम इकट्ठी कर रहे हैं, हम जितने भी जो एविडेंसेस के बिहाव पे भी अगर हमारे पास कोई ऐसी जानकारी आती इकट्ठी करेंगे, दिल्ली पुलिस के साथ शेयर करेंगे।
सर कोई मंशा
Suddenly two people from the visitors galley jumped into the house. They had canisters in their hand. These canisters were emitting yellow smoke. One was attempting to run towards the speaker's chair. He was overpowered by members, and I do not know, they were shouting some slogans which I couldn't make about. But the fact that there were two people who could come into the visitors galley with canisters which could emit smoke, this smoke could have been toxic, it could have been poisonous, or it could have even been smoke bombs, we do not know. But it emitted an yellow smoke, and this is a serious breach of security, especially on 13th of December, the day in which Parliament was attacked in 2001.
How much would have been the age, sir?
20 and 30, young men wearing jeans.
माननीय सदस्यगण, जो घटना शून्यकाल के समय घटित हुई थी, उस घटना की लोकसभा अपने स्तर पर संपूर्ण जांच कर रही है और इस संबंध में दिल्ली पुलिस को भी आवश्यक निर्देश दे दिए गए हैं। लेकिन जो हम सबकी चिंता थी कि वह धुआं क्या था, वह अभी तक प्रारंभिक जांच में जो जांच की उसमें वह साधारण धुआं और सनसनी फैलने वाला धुआं था, इसलिए उस धुएं की कोई ऐसी चिंता का विषय नहीं, उसकी प्रारंभिक ठीक से जांच कर ली गई है। जिन माननीय सदस्यों ने आज नियम 377 के अधीन मामलों को उठाने के एक मिनट सब आप एक मिनट प्लीज, नो, ओके नहीं, एक मिनट प्लीज बालूजी, प्लीज, अपन सब वरिष्ठ सदस्य हैं।
Yeah, some people jumped out from the gallery and some kind of gas they're spreading inside.
In Lok Sabha?
Inside Lok Sabha.
क्या हुआ?
Gas jumped out.
गैस छिट रहा है।
Some gas. कितने लोग? जब कर carry किया,
बहुत सारे लोग हैं।
बहुत सारे लोग। Of course I have seen.
How many people were there,
jumped out from the gallery.
How many persons?
And they are trying to run and beat it. Some kind of gas is being thrown on the inside the house.
किस तरह की कर रहे थे मैम?
वही लो।
कुछ नारा वगैरह भी लगा रहे थे?
हम लोग को भागने से जल्दी।
जितने भी लोग यहाँ पे आते हैं, विजिटर्स हो चाहे रिपोर्टर्स हो, बिकॉज वी डोंट नो कि किसी के टैग्स नहीं है रिपोर्टर्स के, सो एवरीबडी इज लाइक एक दूसरे से टकराते हुए जाते हैं। तो आई थिंक सो गवर्नमेंट को ध्यान देना चाहिए। आई थिंक इट्स अ कंप्लीट सिक्योरिटी लैप्स एंड कुछ भी हो सकता था हाउस के अंदर। एंड मोर ओवर जहाँ पे हम खड़े हैं यहाँ पे प्रॉपर वॉच भी नहीं है, एमपीसी कोई।
Well, so those are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Visuals coming across from the Parliament premises where the breach took place yesterday on 13th of December after the 2001 Parliament attack, the commemoration event where you saw the Prime Minister, you saw the President, you saw the Vice President, all taking floral tribute, paying floral tribute to the martyrs of the 2001 attack. Meanwhile, after the significant security breach in the Parliament, the lingering question is, how did the two men, and you can see the pictures on your screens, how did the two men manage to navigate layers of security within the Parliament House? Now, the Delhi Police Security meeting discussed heightened deployment, but wasn't directly linked to the December 6th threat by Khalistan leader Gurpatwant Singh Pannun. Sources indicate that Sagar and Manoranjan accessed the gallery situated just over 10 feet above the MPs with no significant barrier at all. The security staff, overwhelmed by hundreds of daily visitors, was limited with only 176 out of the 301 officers deployed on the day of the incident. The two men concealed colors, smoke canisters inside their shoes, and it is being said that that is an area which is not typically checked when you're entering the parliamentary premises. So they hid the canisters inside their shoes, and that's how they made their way to the upper visitors gallery, which it seems they made their way to the visitors gallery without any barrier at all. Now, the 6 accused, hailing from different states, were acquainted with each other and shared a common frustration, ladies and gentlemen. The 6 accused, they shared a common frustration over issues such as the farmers' protest, the Manipur crisis, and unemployment. So frustration is what bound these. Now, surprisingly, their family members were unaware of their activities inside the parliament. All of them are currently unemployed. Neelam claimed to be a student preparing for competitive exams after completing masters, a bachelor's in education, a master's in education, an MPhil, and clearing the NET examination as well. Now, the extent of their involvement with any organization is still unknown. Amol, a resident of Maharashtra's Latur, and Manoranjan D from Mysuru, Pratap Simha's constituency, had known each other for the past 4 years via social media. These are the facts from the big story, ladies and gentlemen. The Parliament security breach case. The 4 arrested include Sagar Sharma, D. Manoranjan. They used yellow smoke canisters inside the Lok Sabha. And then you have Neelam Devi and Amol Shinde, who burst red and yellow canisters outside the Parliament. My colleague Kundan Kumar has filed in a report from the parliamentary premises. Let's quickly listen in.
TV9 भारतवर्ष की टीम इस वक्त हिसार में है। हिसार में वो जगह जहां नीलम रहती थी। नीलम सुबह आज पार्लियामेंट हाउस के सामने उसने प्रोटेस्ट किया था और कलर स्टिक जो है उसको उसने पूरा जो है वहां प्रोटेस्ट किया और बताया जा रहा है कि वो इसी पीजी में वहां रहती थी और ये बालाजी पीजी गर्ल्स हॉस्टल है उसमें रहती है। अभी इस घर की बात करें तो यहाँ पे एजेंसीज और पुलिस ने डेरा डाला हुआ है और पूरे जो यहाँ पे जब से पुलिस को पता चला है कि वो यहाँ पे रहती थी उसके बाद से पुलिस और के आला अधिकारी वगैरह भी आ चुके हैं और बार बार जो है यहाँ पे जानकारी जुटाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। कई सारे लोग भी मौजूद हैं। पढ़ने के लिए वो यहाँ पे आई थी और बता रहे हैं कि इसी जगह पे रहती थी। तो कोई जानकारी है कि किस तरह का थी, कैसी थी?
नहीं, पढ़ने के लिए नहीं आई हुई थी। उसकी एज ज्यादा थी, पढ़ने का ऐसा इश्यू ही नहीं था।
अच्छा। हाँ, 42 साल की थी वो, कुछ तैयारी वारी कर रही थी।
हाँ जी।
बेरोजगार थी बता रहे हैं।
हाँ, बता रहे थे बेरोजगार।
अभी उसके बाद से कोई उसके घर वाले या कोई वगैरह यहाँ आए थे या नहीं?
कोई भी नहीं है अभी तक।
अच्छा।
सुबह से 1 बजे से लेके अभी तक कोई नहीं है।
कोई नहीं है। पुलिस प्रशासन वगैरह के लोग यहाँ पे आ रहे हैं?
जी। प्रशासनिक तौर पे बहुत से आए हैं यहाँ पे वेरिफिकेशन करने के लिए, लेकिन अभी भी यहाँ पे पुलिस प्रोटेक्शन यहाँ पे दी हुई है। यहाँ पे अंदर जो है यहाँ पे पुलिस वाले रह रहे हैं। तो आगे क्या होता है, क्योंकि ये मेन मामला संसद भवन का है, तो इसलिए आगे नेक्स्ट क्या होता है तो ये तो प्रशासन के ऊपर निर्भर करता है।
निश्चित रूप से प्रशासन हर पहलू की जांच कर रही है, लेकिन इन सब के बीच जो पीजी में लड़कियां रह रही थी उसमें से मैक्सिमम लड़कियों ने पीजी खाली कर दिया है जब से उनको इस बात की जानकारी मिली है कि नीलम इस तरह के किसी कार में लिप्त थी। हालांकि इसमें एक और कैरेक्टर है, उसका नाम विकी त्यागी है और उसके बारे में, विकी त्यागी और विवेक त्यागी, उसके बारे में भी कहा जाता है कि वो हालांकि गुड़गांव में रहता था लेकिन उसका पुराना कनेक्शन हिसार से है। अब हिसार में किस तरह की जानकारी है इसके बारे में पुलिस पता करने की कोशिश कर रही है, उसके बारे में भी, लेकिन अभी तक बहुत ज्यादा जानकारी उसके बारे में मिली नहीं है। पहली बात। दूसरी बात यह है कि क्या नीलम पहले से विकी को जानती थी या फिर सोशल मीडिया के थ्रू ही उसके संपर्क में आई। ये कई सारी ऐसी बातें हैं जिसकी तलाश जो है पुलिस तफ्तीश कर रही है पूरे मामले में, और जब तक पूरे तफ्तीश पे पहुंच नहीं जाती है तब तक वो कुछ खुलकर कहने को तैयार नहीं है। लेकिन हाँ, इतना जरूर है, जब से नीलम के बारे में पता चला है तब से यहाँ पे एजेंसियों ने डेरा डाल रखा है और तमाम तरह की जानकारियां नीलम के बारे में पता करने की कोशिश की जा रही है। ये भी जानने की कोशिश की जा रही है कि क्या विकी का नीलम से कोई पुराना कनेक्शन था हिसार का, या फिर सोशल मीडिया के थ्रू ही वो मिले और तब जाके वो गुड़गांव में इकट्ठे हुए। ये कई सारे ऐसे सवाल है जिसपे अभी पर्दा उठना बाकी है।
You can vouch on News 9 to bring you all the latest details on the Parliament security breach case. Meanwhile, we're shifting into a quick break over here, but take a look at this promo. Even as the COP28 announces that landmark pact, well, India's aims about 2070 net emissions to be zero. Take a look at this promo and we'll be back for more.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा।
There's certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9 Live. Now, the central government has assured the Supreme Court that guidelines will soon be in place to regulate the seizure of phones and other digital devices, particularly those belonging to media professionals and journalists. Now, this assurance came after a 2-year delay since the initial petition was filed. The court had directed the government to create these guidelines back in November. However, there's been criticism over the time taken to respond. The Additional Solicitor General informed a bench of justices that a committee has been formed and requested more time to formulate the guidelines. Meanwhile, the opposition bloc, INDIA, India has firmly rejected the statement from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, this on a judgment by the Indian Supreme Court, considering it both ill-informed and ill-intended. Now, the Ministry of External Affairs pointed out that the OIC issued this statement at the behest of a nation with a track record of human rights violations and active promotions of cross-border terrorism. India asserts that such actions by the OIC only serve to undermine its credibility. Meanwhile, take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. In a historic accord at the COP28 summit in Dubai, almost 200 nations unite, pledging to move away from fossil fuels. Now, this groundbreaking agreement marks a pivotal departure from oil dependence, addressing imminent climate threats. After 2 weeks of intense negotiations, the deal signals a global commitment to alternative energy. COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber hails it as a historic move, emphasizing the need for concrete actions. Now, the agreement explicitly outlines a transition to renewable energy sources, targeting net zero emissions by the year 2050. Emphasizing equitable progress, the deal calls for accelerated renewable energy capacities by 2030 and explores carbon capture technologies despite OPEC's resistance. The deal receives acclaim globally. Norway's foreign minister lauds it as a pivotal acknowledgement and confrontation of transitioning from fossil fuels. Challenges persist as individual countries must now execute commitments through national policies and investments in the United States. Political divisions in Congress pose hurdles despite recent legislation supporting clean energy. While renewables grow globally, fossil fuels still constitute about 80% of energy sources. The timeline for reaching peak demand for fossil fuels remains uncertain. United States' climate envoy, John Kerry, sees this as a moment of multilateralism and defines the common good, expressing optimism and gratitude.
I think this is a global turning point. For the first time, the world is committing to transition away from fossil fuels. For the first time, there is a loss and damage fund to support the most vulnerable countries. So this has the potential to be the beginning of a new era, the post-fossil era. Let's celebrate this. Europe is at the forefront of it, investing in clean and homegrown energy for all. This is the right direction of travel.
We have confronted realities and we have set the world in the right direction. We have given it a robust action plan to keep 1.5 within reach. It is a plan that is led by the science. It is a balanced plan that tackles emissions, bridges the gap on adaptation, reimagines global finance, and delivers on loss and damage. Enhanced, balanced, but make no mistake, historic package to accelerate climate action. It is the UAE consensus. An agreement is only as good as its implementation. We are what we do, not what we say. We must take the steps necessary to turn this agreement into tangible actions. If we unite in action, we can have a profoundly positive effect on all our futures. We have now reached the end of our joint plenary meeting. Delegates, colleagues, and friends, I must say that you did it. You delivered. Allow me, please, to declare the meeting adjourned.
For the first time, after 30 years since Rio times, focus spots the attention on fossil fuels, on a fossil fuel world that needs to step down from fossil fuels and to provide energy security to all with other means.
This has been very long an aspiration, and many thought it was not in the making. It was simply, with all the geopolitics, all the difficult positions, this was not to be had. And the good news is that humanity did manage to arrive at this, even though we should have done this earlier.
Two positive things. First, having this discussion at the heart of the oil production system, and also that it was led by somebody that could speak to those countries and that sector, because its history as a country is related to that. And I don't think anybody else could have been in that position. We kept saying to the president that we want to see him exercising that influence, especially also because of the political structure of these countries, and that to bring that, and I think actually he achieved that. We have to recognize that.
Now, representatives from nearly 200 countries that agreed at the COP28 climate summit to begin reducing global consumption of fossil fuels to avert the worst of climate change, signaling the eventual end of the oil age. Next up on your screens are key takeaways from COP28.
I must say that you did it. You delivered.
After 2 weeks of hard-fought debate, nations struck a historic deal at COP28 in Dubai. The pact aims to transition the global economy away from fossil fuels. Here are some key takeaways. This is the first time the world has expressed a unified desire to eventually end the use of fossil fuels. The provision calls for, quote, transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, with the goal of achieving net zero by 2050. While it is sending a resounding signal to international markets, it will not immediately destroy oil consumption or shrink prices. However, incremental policy moves and shifting investment trends over time could ensure a longer-term transformation of the energy economy. The pact also had rewards for oil producers. There's a clear acknowledgement that technologies like carbon capture can reduce the climate impact of oil, natural gas, and coal. Boosting such technologies was highlighted in a list of actions that countries should take to fight climate change. A source familiar with Saudi thinking said the kingdom could accept the deal because it provides a menu for every country to follow its own pathway. Carbon capture remains very expensive in certain applications. It's also never been proven at the vast global scale needed to have a significant impact. The pact is missing any additional financing to help developing nations transition away from fossil fuels. Money to help poor, climate-vulnerable countries adapt to the impacts of climate change was also lacking. However, there was a victory at the start of the summit for poor nations hit by climate disaster when delegates adopted a new fund to help them cope with loss and damages. The US, European Union, and scores of other countries said the deal maintained a chance of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial average. But getting there will be tough. It would require cutting emissions nearly in half in just 6 years, and making it to net zero by 2050. The draft calls for countries to do so, but some, like the Alliance of Small Island States, questioned whether it will happen.
Well, meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, next up is our segment on the West Asian conflict between Israel and Hamas, the latest from the war front. The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being. Well, the war between Israel and Hamas has now entered its 69th day. Let's get you the latest updates from the war front on your screens first. Take a look at this. 10 Israeli soldiers were killed in the worst combat losses since late October, according to the IDF. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to continue the fight until the end, international acceptance or not. Meanwhile, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, he said no one determines for us what to do. Israel continues to bomb locations across the Gaza Strip, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, Jake Sullivan, he's going to meet Saudi Crown Prince and has discussed Gaza crisis ahead of his Israel visit as well. National Security Advisor for the United States. Now, meanwhile, the United States has imposed new sanctions on Hamas officials. Gaza hospitals, on the other hand, have received a high number of casualties on Wednesday after that strike in the southern half of the Gaza Strip. Important to note here that Israel has suffered its worst combat losses for more than a month on Wednesday after an ambush by Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Israel reported 10 of its soldiers were killed in the past 24 hours, including a full colonel commanding a forward base and a lieutenant colonel commanding a regiment. It was the worst one-day loss since 15 were killed back on the 31st of October. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu, he told soldiers in Gaza over the radio that they would continue the offensive until victory is achieved. Israel had global sympathy when it launched a campaign to eradicate Hamas after the latter launched that deadly assault across the border fence on the 7th of October, killed about 1,200 Israelis, mostly civilians, took about 240 plus Israelis as hostages. And since then, Israel has continued to besiege the enclave and laid much of it to waste. Gaza's health ministry said on Wednesday that at least 18,608 people have been killed and 50,594 injured across Israeli strikes since the 7th of October. Meanwhile, Chief Israeli military spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, in a televised press briefing, has described a heavy feeling in the face of yesterday's military losses in Gaza, but said casualties were expected as the fighting intensified.
אנחנו נמצאים בשלב בו פועלים ברצועה הרבה מאוד כוחות במגע עם האויב. ככל שאנחנו פועלים רחב באופן שבו אנחנו פועלים ברצועה, יש יותר התקלויות ולצערי יש גם יותר נפגעים.
Meanwhile, Israelis protested in Tel Aviv to demand the release of the remaining Hamas hostages. Thousands of Israelis have been rallying against the government's handling of the Hamas hostage crisis. Many protesters have called for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to step down.
Among them is 26-year-old Noah Argamani, whose terminally ill mother recently pleaded to see her daughter one last time.
Each day that is passing, they suffer more and more.
We are in what has become known as Hostages Square. Located in central Tel Aviv, it's become the place people gather to demand the return of those taken during the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. Many here, including Shimrit Schiffer, believe this is what their government needs to do to meet that demand.
I expect my government to act.
Nearby, hundreds of protesters called for that same government to be replaced. Here, it's not just hostages that need to be freed, but the whole state, as this sign reads.
They're shouting slogans like impeachment now, and the government has blood on its hands. After 16 years in power, the people here no longer believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu is the right person to lead the country, especially in this moment.
Netanyahu needs to say, it was my responsibility, I was in charge, and I'm going to resign. If he says so, it can perhaps live a few more months until the end of the war.
Among the people out on the streets today, there's also mounting anger at the way the Netanyahu government is handling the conflict with Hamas.
I think the real argument in Israel right now is between people who see themselves living here in peace and are willing to make the sacrifice to get there, and the people who don't, the people who feel, if you feel content living on the sword, that's how we say it in Hebrew, like if you feel content living in war, I have nothing in common with you. And there are too many people in the government who feel that way.
Netanyahu, of course, at first thinks about his interest. We call to ceasefire, because only in ceasefire we can talk and make a good deal to bring all of the hostages home. All the time it's war, it's continue, it's no deal.
The protesters continued their march through the streets of Tel Aviv until they reached Hostages Square. They may have differing opinions on Israel's leadership, but they are one in their demand: bring the hostages home. Among those already here is 85-year-old Yocheved Lifshitz, a former hostage, one of the first to be released from Gaza, a living, walking sign of hope for the many still waiting for their loved ones to return.
And shifting our focus to some other top global developments, the U.S. House of Representatives voted on Wednesday to formally authorize its ongoing impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden as Republicans unite behind the effort, even though they have yet to find evidence of wrongdoing by the Democrat.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted.
The Republican-controlled House of Representatives voted Wednesday to authorize an impeachment inquiry into Democratic President Joe Biden after months of investigation that has so far failed to uncover evidence of wrongdoing by the president. Republicans have said without proof that Biden improperly traded access while he served as vice president in President Barack Obama's administration. The White House says they have no basis for an impeachment inquiry. Among the accusations from Republicans is that the president profited from his son Hunter Biden's business dealings while serving as vice president. Reuters correspondent Andy Sullivan is covering the story.
The Republicans have dug up some evidence that Hunter did trade on this perception that he could provide a pipeline to his powerful father. But they have not provided any evidence so far that Biden himself profited. They've hinted that they think he might have profited from his son's business dealings, but they haven't turned up any evidence.
Republicans have pointed to an FBI document from 2020 in which an informant claims the head of Burisma, a Ukrainian energy firm that included Hunter Biden on its board of directors, said, quote, it cost $5 million to pay one Biden and $5 million to another Biden. According to Representative Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee, the FBI dropped the matter after determining there was no evidence to back it up. Burisma is at the center of another allegation from Republicans who have said Biden pressured Ukraine to remove its top prosecutor to protect Burisma and Hunter Biden from a possible corruption investigation.
The defense is that Biden was calling for this guy's removal as the official policy of the United States government. He was acting on behalf of the Obama administration. The Obama administration had determined this guy's bad news. We want him out of there. Biden was the messenger that delivered that. Now, certainly, you could see there might be potential for a conflict of interest here. Here's Biden pressuring a country to remove its top investigator while his son is involved with a very prominent company there. But again, they haven't turned up any evidence of a real quid pro quo.
Also, Republicans have raised questions about the prosecution of Hunter Biden, who has pleaded not guilty to federal charges that he lied about his drug use while buying a handgun and has been charged separately with tax evasion.
Now, Republicans are saying, have they soft-pedaled this investigation? Did the Justice Department try to block this prosecutor? They've turned up a few internal government whistleblowers who said that, they didn't go as hard on this as they could. Now, the prosecutor, who again was appointed by President Trump, has said he hasn't encountered any interference. He's been able to do his work, and he's clearly brought these charges.
Hunter Biden's lawyer said Hunter has repaid his taxes in full and would not be facing charges if he was not the president's son.
Meanwhile, in Poland, young people have pinned high hopes on the new Tusk government. After 8 years of conservative Polish government, young voters have yet again pinned high hopes on the center-left coalition of Donald Tusk to revive democracy. They expect the Tusk government to strengthen relations with the European Union and aspire reforms in a variety of areas.
Monika Horno-Cieślak is 34 years old and has become the new ombudswoman for children's rights in Poland. After 8 years of rule by a conservative government, a group of centre-left parties has come together to form a new government in Poland. The new coalition aims to bring Poland closer to the European values, and Monika wants to be part of this change.
I'm glad that we've reached a new openness, that we can do a lot, that we have the opportunity to represent the voice of young people who showed us their voice at the parliamentary elections. Because let us remember that young people in Poland went to the polls in great numbers, and I hope that their voice will continue to be heard.
The new parliamentary majority in Poland stands proof that the votes of the youth count. The revival of the good relations with Brussels also plays a key role for the new government. Over recent years, Michał Wawrykowicz, lawyer and co-founder of the Free Courts Initiative, condemned the Conservative Law and Justice government's violations of the rule of law. Poland has been fined by the European Union over its controversial judicial reforms.
These courts confirmed that many areas of Polish judiciary and Polish rule of law
was distracted by the government. So right now we are at the moment where the new government has an obligation to implement all of
which make up the new coalition government. These voters are now hoping for reforms in a variety of areas. Monika Horno-Cieślak is aware of people's huge expectations. In addition to improving children's rights, climate protection and forging a tight cooperation with the European Union are her main goals.
As far as the relations with the EU are concerned, thinking in terms of protecting the rights of young people, it is important to deal with the climate issue, because here in Poland we have climate strikes organized by the youth. It is important to work out good solutions in this area, because I know that young people are very much counting on a dialogue with the EU and also on a dialogue with the Polish government.
The new Polish government now faces the huge task of not disappointing the majority of Poles who voted for them. One thing is for sure, Poland is facing major changes.
Moving on, Russian-speaking Finns have deplored at the border closure. People in Finland have been cut off from friends and relatives in Russia. Helsinki accuses Moscow of ushering migrants from third countries towards Finland and has sealed the border until at least the 13th of December. Here's a report to understand what it was all about.
Алло, пап, привет.
Привет.
Как у тебя дела? Голос бодрый, веселый.
Бодрый, да дела все так же.
Instead of hugs and kisses, now only telephone calls. Just 200 kilometers separate Yevgeny from his father. Yevgeny and his family live in the Finnish city of Lappeenranta. His dad across the border in St. Petersburg. As Finland shut down its border with Russia, Yevgeny doesn't know when he will see his father again. His dad was recently diagnosed with cancer and suffered a stroke.
Я очень переживаю, что мало ли у него со здоровьем ухудшения произойдут именно вот сейчас, в ближайшее время. И это, конечно, что я не смогу быть рядом. У меня прям в голове такие мысли, что придется бросить ребят, ставить мою семью и бежать через Мурманск там или, не знаю, лететь в Стамбул из Хельсинки, я не знаю, как еще и как.
Finland says it's closing its border after a rise in asylum seekers from third countries. Helsinki blames Moscow for orchestrating a migration crisis. Finnish officials believe this move is in retaliation for Finland joining NATO.
Our aim is to say to Russia that this is not, we don't accept this, it's unacceptable, and it needs to be stopped.
Raja-Jooseppi in Lapland, 1,000 kilometers away from Helsinki, was the last open border crossing. A DW crew went there in the day before it closed. The situation there was calm. In the last 2 days of its operation, no asylum seekers tried to cross the border into Finland. Journalists were shown the pile of bicycles left by those who crossed it already. Yet the Finnish government decided to shut down the border completely. It was a big blow for nearly 100,000 Russian speakers in Finland. They mostly live in the south, in cities like Lappeenranta and Kotka.
Around 5% of Lappeenranta citizens are Russian speakers. Russian border is only 25 kilometers away, and many have friends and relatives on the other side. As Finland shut down the border, many here are wondering when they are going to see their loved ones again, especially since Christmas time is approaching.
Yevgeny and his wife Victoria are hoping that the border will be open again soon, and they can spend holidays with their family.
Я очень надеюсь на новогоднее чудо. Я верю в это сильно, и думаю, что это произойдет.
For now, they keep in touch with their family over the phone every day.
And take a look at this. The Thailand police has seized more than 15 million methamphetamine pills and other illegal substances worth about $8.15 million in what authorities said was one of the largest drug busts so far this year. The United Nations said in a report released earlier that trafficking of synthetic drugs in East and Southeast Asia is surging, with high volumes of methamphetamine continuing to be produced from the Golden Triangle regions, where the borders of Myanmar, Thailand and Laos meet, and smuggling routes were expanding. Meanwhile, in Thailand, 4 people were arrested in connection with the seizure late on Wednesday, which also included 420 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine and some heroin at a home in Nakhon Pathom province, just north of the capital, Bangkok. Cutting across news from Pakistan, where a special court in Pakistan indicted former PM Imran Khan and his close aide, former Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, in the Cypher case for allegedly leaking state secrets and violating the laws of the country. This was the second time that the two leaders were indicted. Earlier, they were indicted on the 23rd of October, but the process was nullified by the Islamabad High Court. Imran's lawyer contested the indictment, saying it would be valid only if it was signed by the accused. A guilty verdict under the Official Secrets Act could bring up to 10 years in prison for Imran Khan. What next for Imran Khan and the upcoming presidential parliamentary polls? Well, we'll have to wait and find out.
कोई फर्द जुर्म में भी कोर्ट की प्रोसीडिंग में मौजूदा फर्द जुर्म कोई नहीं लगी है। कोई फर्द जुर्म वो होती है जब आप जज उसको कहता है आप इस पे साइन करो और वो साइन कर दे, फिर फर्द जुर्म होता है।
And taking a look at some other international stories, where people seem to suffer a difficult time with the snow stalling their plans and day-to-day lives, animals were clearly having a better time with a blanket of white surrounding them in China after the snowstorms. Animals across species were seen enjoying themselves as the blizzard engulfed their enclosures with a thick layer of snow. A giant panda was seen rolling around playfully in Beijing Zoo after the first snowfall of winter arrived in the Chinese capital early Monday. You also could see 2 bears seen play fighting with one another, whilst a larger one lazed around. Take a look at that. Even the mighty tiger could not resist a little stroll as it dug its paws into the pristine white of the snow. Now, Beijing could face temperatures as low as minus 18 degrees Celsius this weekend, compared to the mid-December average of about minus 8 degrees Celsius. And this is the season of joy as Christmas approaches. And at Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry, the spirit of Christmas resonates worldwide. The Christmas Around the World exhibition unfolds with a majestic 4-story grand tree adorned by over 50 trees and displays representing holiday traditions from diverse cultures. Amidst a forest of over 50 trees of global tradition stands a 4-story, 50-foot-tall grand tree. Now, director of the brand engagement, he shared the exhibit's unique history dating back to 1942 during wartime, where communities sought solace and happiness at the museum.
The great thing about this exhibition is it really showcases how alike we all are, especially during these times where we might have some differences, but at the end of the day, these trees are a beautiful canvas to show how we all celebrate our traditions around the globe at various times of the year.
And moving on, Tesla is recalling nearly all vehicles sold in the United States. More than 2 million to update software and fix a defective system that's supposed to ensure drivers are paying attention when using autopilot. Take a look at this report.
Tesla is recalling just over 2 million vehicles in the United States. It's to install new safeguards for vehicles carrying its autopilot advanced driver assistance system. The electric vehicle giant made the move after a safety regulator said the system was open to foreseeable misuse. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, has investigated Tesla for more than 2 years. He wanted to know whether its vehicles adequately ensured drivers pay attention when using the driver assistance system. Tesla said in the recall filing that autopilot's software system controls may not be sufficient to prevent driver misuse and could increase the risk of a crash. Tesla's autopilot is intended to enable cars to steer, accelerate and brake automatically within their lane. Enhanced autopilot can assist in changing lanes on highways but does not make them autonomous. Tesla said it did not agree with the regulator's analysis, but added it would deploy an over-the-air software update. It said this will incorporate additional controls and alerts to those already existing on affected vehicles. The aim is to encourage the driver to stick to their continuous driving responsibility whenever auto steer is engaged. The company did not respond to a question on whether the recall would be performed outside the US. NHTSA opened a probe in 2021 into autopilot after identifying more than a dozen crashes in which Tesla vehicles hit stationary emergency vehicles. Its investigation into autopilot will remain open as it monitors Tesla's remedies.
Well, time for me to slip into a quick break here. Lots more continues right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
Pakistani spy agency ISI's sinister plan to target India. Training women to honey trap top civil and military officials. Counter honey trapping ops initiated by India. But gullible victims still caught in the web.